A wave of reports has emerged suggesting that Ukrainian forces may have carried out or are preparing to carry out strikes deep inside Russian territory, potentially targeting military installations near Moscow. The strikes reportedly involve long-range missiles supplied by the United States, reigniting fierce debate in Washington and across Europe about the limits of Western support for Kyiv. According to sources cited by multiple international outlets, recent explosions in Russia's Bryansk and Belgorod regions bear the signature of Western-supplied systems, such as the Army Tactical Missile System, ATACMS. While Ukrainian officials have neither confirmed nor denied these attacks, social media footage and satellite imagery show multiple impacts consistent with precision-guided strikes. If verified, this would mark one of the boldest escalations in the war since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. For months, the U.S. had resisted allowing its weapons to be used for attacks inside Russia, fearing direct confrontation with Moscow. But with Russian missile barrages continuing against Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure, that policy appears to be shifting. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov condemned the alleged attacks as acts of terrorism orchestrated by the United States, warning that such moves will not go unanswered. Russian state media have already begun framing the strikes as proof of direct U.S. involvement in the conflict, fueling concerns of a broader geopolitical showdown. In Washington, the Biden administration and now the Trump-aligned opposition are engaged in a heated policy debate. Reports indicate that Donald Trump, who continues to hold major influence within the Republican Party, has privately discussed decisive measures if Moscow's aggression expands into NATO territory. Some analysts interpret this as political posturing, while others fear it hints at an escalation doctrine that could include offensive posturing toward Russian assets. The U.S. Department of Defense has not officially confirmed the authorization of Ukrainian strikes inside Russia, but several anonymous Pentagon sources have acknowledged that operational flexibility was recently granted to Kyiv. This phrase, widely interpreted by defense analysts, suggests that Ukraine may now have the green light to engage targets across the border, especially those used to launch attacks on Ukrainian soil. Critics in Congress argue that such a move risks crossing a dangerous red line. If U.S. weapons hit Moscow, even indirectly, the world could be facing a nuclear flashpoint, warned Senator Rand Paul. Meanwhile, pro-Ukraine lawmakers insist that limiting Kyiv's reach only benefits the Kremlin. Ukraine must be allowed to defend itself fully, Senator Lindsey Graham said, even if that means taking the fight to Russian territory. The White House has maintained a measured tone, emphasizing that Ukraine's decisions on how to defend its sovereignty are its own. Yet the ambiguity surrounding what defensive use truly means is deepening global unease. In Moscow, the mood is defiant and anxious. Russian state television has been flooded with fiery rhetoric, portraying the alleged strikes as Western aggression and calling for retaliatory measures. President Vladimir Putin reportedly convened an emergency meeting with his Security Council, during which intelligence officials presented evidence that U.S.-made missiles were used in at least one of the recent explosions near the Tula region. If the Kremlin confirms this claim, it could justify a wide range of responses, from intensified bombardments of Ukrainian infrastructure to cyber and disinformation campaigns targeting Western nations. Russian military commentators have even floated the possibility of deploying tactical nuclear weapons as a deterrent signal. European capitals are watching closely. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg reiterated that the alliance is not part of the conflict but reaffirmed its unwavering support for Ukraine's right to self-defense. Behind closed doors, however, several European diplomats fear that an attack near Moscow could spiral into open confrontation. Markets have already begun to react. Oil prices spiked by nearly 6% overnight amid fears of disruption to Russian exports. The ruble dropped sharply, while defense stocks in the US and Europe climbed. The global diplomatic fallout is just beginning, as world leaders call for restraint and transparency. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky remains steadfast. "We will not be intimidated," he said in a national address. "Russia brought this war to our homes. We will bring justice wherever it hides." His words, while galvanizing for Ukrainians, send a chilling message to Moscow and to a world bracing for the next escalation. As reports of missile strikes ripple across global headlines, a quieter and equally dangerous conflict is unfolding behind the scenes, the shadow war of intelligence, cyber operations, and propaganda. US and NATO intelligence services have reportedly intensified surveillance over Russian command centers, communications, and air defense networks. Satellite data, intercepted transmissions, and AI-assisted analytics are now at the core of modern warfare, and both sides know it. Sources within Western intelligence agencies have hinted at a new phase of coordination between the US and Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, GUR. While Washington publicly distances itself from direct operations inside Russia, behind closed doors the coordination appears deeper than ever. Cyber specialists from allied nations are said to be feeding Ukraine's forces with real-time battlefield insights, targeting logistics, fuel depots, and radar sites that support Russia's long-range missile program. In response, Russia has launched its own wave of countermeasures. The Federal Security Service, FSB, has accused Western nations of weaponizing information warfare, claiming that NATO-linked hackers attempted to breach Russian defense servers. Moscow has retaliated with cyber attacks targeting Ukrainian government portals and European energy infrastructure. Though these attacks have been mostly contained, the message is clear: the conflict has expanded into cyberspace. Meanwhile, the battle for global perception is intensifying. Kremlin-controlled media outlets are pushing narratives that frame the alleged strikes as American aggression, arguing that the US is directly attacking Russian sovereignty through proxies. Russian citizens are being warned of possible foreign attacks and urged to support new mobilization measures. In contrast, Western media portrays the strikes as a desperate yet justified move by Ukraine to defend itself from relentless Russian bombardments. This information duel is shaping not only public opinion but also diplomatic pressure. In nations like Germany, France, and Italy, citizens are growing weary of the war's economic toll. Governments must now walk a fine line between solidarity with Ukraine and avoiding a catastrophic escalation with Russia. Defense analysts say that this phase of hybrid warfare may determine the outcome more than any missile exchange. Control of information, technological superiority, and public perception could prove more decisive than territorial gains. This isn't just about artillery anymore, says Dr. Amelia Weiss, a European security expert. It's about who controls the truth and who manipulates it faster. Within the US, internal divisions are also deepening. Trump's assertive rhetoric and his supporters' calls for decisive action have reignited partisan debate about America's global role. Some see him as pushing deterrence through strength, others fear his words could provoke open conflict.